beautiful out here today. Come here, girl. I want to talk about stabilization a little bit, and I'm just talking about hand stabilization, right? There's a ton of things I can do to get really good B-roll, really good footage, without having to actually buy expensive stabilizers. And I want to show you guys some techniques that I use that help me stabilize footage, and maybe you can get something out of it. But it's super important to keep things tight, right? If you don't want your arms way out here like this, anytime you're doing like this is going to be unstable. The most stable you can be is when your whole body is like a robot. Think of yourself like you're made of metal, and you hold your arms and elbows in. It's just one less thing to move, right? So you're not going up and down with your elbows. You're not going this way with your forearms. You're not doing any of this, trying to hold it up. You're holding it like this, and when you want to turn left, you're turning the whole torso. See that? When you can bend back and use your back like that, or bend forwards. Works great. I can get real stable footage. Let me show you some of the stuff I can get doing techniques like that. So this is a real cool trick where basically you're just leaning forward with your tripod or leaning backwards, and you're kind of just letting gravity pull you down, right? You're almost weightless for about 3 seconds while you're going down. And if you're shooting like high frame rate, like 60, 120 frames a second, even with 30, you can end up getting real stable footage just because you kind of let it fall forward by itself. So it's a really cool technique, and I use that a lot. Probably wondering why I have this camera strap on. I never use these straps unless I need to. Another stabilization method is using your straps, okay, and pulling a little bit of tension on your neck. As tall as I am, my body, that's another axis. So now I've got this axis taken care of, and my height, as long as I'm not bobbing up and down, is taken care of. So I'm very stable. Look at this. So this is another really good method of staying stable. It works really well. So all the stuff I'm doing out back when I'm walking towards the tree like that, right, is I'm walking heel to toe, okay? So I'm walking heel down and I'm rolling my foot. My next foot down is my heel, and I'm rolling that one too. And I'm doing one in front of the other, okay, with my knees slightly bent, okay? So you don't want to be bending your knees like this and all of this, and that's just too much, right? So it's just a very simple walk. Knees slightly bent. It's almost like moonwalk from back in the day, and you're doing it forwards instead of backwards. Let me show you guys moonwalk. You ready for moonwalk? You want to be doing like this as you walk forward. Good girl. Hey guys. I came outside and decided to practice. I'm going to be going to St. Louis. I'm going to be doing lots of B-roll, and I'm not going to be bringing any tripods with me, so that kind of creates a problem. No monopods really either, so it's all about the handheld. So I'm trying to think what are moves I can do. What kind of things can I do to make sure that my footage is stable? So when you have two cameras doing handheld at the same time, what happens is you could end up with two zoom shots. Right? So handheld number one is zooming in on the guitar, handheld number two is zooming in on the same guitar, and you don't realize it. And when you get to post and you're at that part of the song, you've got no footage to cut to. So we've got to have a steady tripod shot from probably wide from the back, maybe the soundboard, and we're going to try and get two of those, right? And if we can do that, then we can get more free out front with the handhelds. I'm going to have one on the Ronin stage left, and I'm going to have the other one in my hand. I'll switch off back and forth as much as I need to. But Aaron's going to be on the other side of the stage, and he'll be doing the same thing, right? So he'll have two cameras handheld, I'll have two myself handheld. We think there's a pit to go around front, and so that'll make things a lot easier. And then we're going to have two tripod steady shots, right? So we always, in post, we will always have something to cut to, right? No matter what. The level of how crazy I can get on stage and side stage and everywhere else out in front with the handhelds, that's all going to depend on, you know, how much steady shots do we have in the background, how much backup footage do we have. So what we'll do is probably trade off on like the zooming, right? So I'm stage left, he's stage right, we're both handheld. Well, for this first song, he'll do any of the zooming. I'll stay back. I'll make sure that I've got at least one or two players, you know, completely in my frame. And then maybe we'll switch off, and then he'll do that, and he'll make sure he has players in his frame, and then I'll do a little bit of zooming, right? And when we do it that way, in post, you've always got somewhere to go, right? And you're not sitting there looking at two pieces of B-roll, you know, of the front of a drum and the edge of a guitar, right? And that's not where you want to be in post, so we've got to make sure we have all of that, right, Onyx? She says she knows. But our timelines are 24 frames a second. The way frame rates work and the way video works is that the editing software will drop frames to make it fit into the frame rate of the sequence that you're using in your software. So if you do a new sequence in your software and you're at 24 frames a second, like you probably should be, if you take a 60 frame per second clip and plop it in the 24 frame timeline, it's going to try to play 2 frames for every 1 frame normally. And that's going to give you good quality. And it's also going to play twice as long. It's going to be longer in your editing software, and it's going to take twice as long to go through. That's slow motion. If you shoot 120 frames a second, even slower. So if I do a quick B-roll like this, and I go 1, 2, 3, right? Well, that 3 seconds probably didn't shake at all. And those 3 seconds also are actually 3 times 5, because I'm putting it in a 24 frame sequence, and it's actually at 120 frames per second. So that's going to give me 15 seconds of slow motion footage. Most cameras, you'll be shooting slow motion at 60. That's got its own look. 120 has its own look. But traditionally, and what people are going to be expecting to see when you're doing kind of documentaries, or whether you're doing a short film or what have you, it's going to be 24 frames a second. So you probably want to stick with that most of the time. Hey guys, so go slow motion. If you can do 120 frames a second, even if you can do 60 frames a second, when you plop that into a 24 frames per second timeline, oh my goodness, okay? Now the slower you shoot, meaning the more frames per second, well, the easier it is to avoid vibrations and other kinds of shakes because you're in slow motion. You only need 3 seconds of a clip. So if you can get 3 to 4 second clips, slow motion, all of the handshake will be a non-issue. So watch what I'm talking about, I'll show you. Definitely feels good to be back inside in the air conditioning. Woo! I'm telling you, nice soft light. Now, a lot of cameras have in-body stabilization. That stabilization is basically built around the sensor. And as your camera moves and jiggles, the sensor moves and jiggles in a compensating way. That's very good stabilization. Canon has what they call IBIS, that's in-body stabilization. Nikon has VR, which is vibration reduction. So you could have a camera that doesn't have any in-body stabilization at all, buy a lens that's stabilized, and use the stabilization in the lens. And to take it a whole nother step further, you can actually use the lens stabilization with the in-body stabilization in the camera as well. And when you do that, you get generally you get very, very, very stable footage. There are some times when you probably don't want to be doing that. If you're adapting lenses, you can test it, but generally I wouldn't recommend, if you're using a Nikon lens on a Canon body with an adapter or metabones, I would highly not recommend using the IBIS in body and in that Nikon lens. That's not going to do you well. What we're going to do now is talk about motorized stabilization. Up till now, we've been talking about hand holding and doing different kind of tricks. Arms straight, elbows down, and moving as one unit. Left and right, up and down. Okay? That's hand holding stuff. Here's another option for stabilization. This is the Ronin-m. This is a larger size gimbal. It's a 3-axis gimbal, and gives us really, really, really smooth footage. Probably the smoothest you can get. We don't use lens stabilization. We don't use in-body stabilization when we use the Ronin. It is all motorized. Most people will do a video of the Ronin-m and they'll do an unboxing of a nice new clean one. This one has been through out to the desert twice, and then I had it down on the strip here in Vegas last night, and now it's just fresh out of my backpack. Believe it or not, these things are not super delicate. As long as you protect the motors in them, you can pack them up. I usually wrap this up into maybe a t-shirt or a pair of pants, and I'll put it into my backpack. But I can walk around strip or anywhere else with this on my back and be able to whip it out and use it anytime I want on the street. Works great. So don't think that if you do buy a Ronin-m that you're not going to be able to be mobile. You can, as long as you're willing to backpack. And let's see how long it really takes. Is it that big a deal? Let's see. I believe you go this way with it. You got to be nice and even, and it's important to have this stand level. Right? That's important for when you're balancing. Now, the good thing is with this is that once you've balanced this for a certain camera with a certain lens, and if you know you're going to use it again, well, balancing is really minimal. It's not a lot of work. You're almost already set up. You know, it's not going to be off by much. If you're switching lenses or bodies, then you're going to be, once you get good at it, you'll be about 5-7 minutes to get balanced. The first few days I used it, it took me, 20 minutes sometimes to really get good and stabilized. But at the end of the day, this body will go on the plate here at the bottom, okay? And then what we do is you can use an app in your phone. I use a Surface Pro, and you can plug in here, or you can Bluetooth to this, okay? And what you do is you configure this, and you'll set up how powerful and how much tension the motors all have. There's a motor here, there's a motor here, and a motor over here, and that's 3 axes of stabilization. So basically I can pick this up when it's turned on. In fact, I'll turn it on for you. Okay, and now it's on, and you can see how smooth that moves. I know the camera's not in it, but you can get the picture. Up, down, left, and right. Okay, so that's our third form of stabilization. On to the last one. Alright, one more form of stabilization that we like to use is sliders. Sliders are awesome for slow moving footage. Basically, you can put maybe a ball head from your tripod here, or just get your camera on. Some of the non-motorized sliders where you can just push them, and they'll work that way, but your push is never perfect, it's not even, and so you'll end up maybe with speed issues. So motorized sliders are the way to go. Now these start at about the $400 range. This is a cheaper one. This is about $450 GVM, but it's programmable, and I can program time lapses, so it will actually, I can program it to my camera so that it moves a teeny bit and takes a picture each time, and it could take maybe an hour to get across the whole slider, and I've got a 10-second time lapse of whatever it is I was pointing at. Or I can move this real quickly and have it go maybe more like this speed, motorized, and I'll do that for like an interview or even like a tutorial or something like I'm doing here today. When I'm running gunning, it's all handheld, but when I have time to break out the slider and the Ronin-m, I do it as much as I can when I'm really getting that cinematic Hollywood type footage. Thanks for watching this video about stabilization. I hope you got something out of it. Stay tuned and get ready for the next episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.